Are we live? It looks like we are live.
We are.
Awesome. My name is Eboné Bell, and I want to thank you all for joining us this afternoon for Catherine Cooper's The Protected Love, presented by the Equality Chamber of Commerce. I'm really excited today because we have a great group of people to talk about all kinds of amazing things that I think should always be talked about within our community, and keep the conversation going. So shout out to Kat for wanting to have this conversation with some amazing individuals. So first and foremost, what did you tune into besides the unprotected Black love? Well, it's going to be a discussion to talk about the disconnect in the Black community, specifically the love that we have for one another, which is great, and the relationships between men and women and the LGBTQ community. So the love, but also the disconnect, and where we go from here to repair that, and of course, continue the love. So you are in for a treat. I'm really excited to hear from people because I have some burning questions, and I have a feeling I'm gonna get some great responses from people. But without further ado, I want to quickly go down the line here of folks on our panel so you guys can get to know them. And I will say the first couple, Ryan and Amber, thank you for being here. They're going to be with us for about 45 minutes or so. So they might have to check out a little bit later. But I'm super excited that they can make it here. So Ryan and Amber are childhood sweethearts and military veteran spouses with 8 years under the belt of marriage. Congrats, y'all. They are passionate about building healthy relationships and personal growth. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us. We're excited.
Yay. Then we have Kat and Marcus, who have also been together over 8 years. Both are intellects and challengers of the status quo. I love that. Their fun-loving personalities bring laughter to whoever they're around. And as artists, the combination of his voice and her words fight against closed-minded bigotry and hatred. I think I'm gonna have you guys write my bio from here on out. That's amazing. Then we have Whitley. Whitley is in a committed relationship of 3 years. She and her partner are both business owners that are dedicated to transforming our community physically, mentally, and financially. Whitley, welcome. I love all of that. And we have Sierra, who is from Baltimore, Maryland, and is heavily involved in music as an independent singer and songwriter who goes by the name Raynita J. Welcome, Sierra. Then we have Seneca, who is a writer, an activist, a womanist, love that, and lover of everything Black. Welcome, Seneca, and I love your background. And two more, we have Mimi, who is a business owner, radio show host for Inside Out, one of TAGG Magazine's class of 2020 Most Enterprising Women, shout out. She is the first trans woman of color to be elected to the board of advisors, serve as the vice president, and now the president of Equality Chamber of Commerce, DC. I know that's right. Welcome, welcome. And last but certainly not least, we have Sergeant Lawrence K. Toteme Jr. He's a combat vet, educator, community activist, and founder and CEO of Black Excellence in, is it Liberia Forward? Liberia Forward. Got it. I saw your mouth. I literally read your mouth. I was like, okay, I definitely mispronounced that. Well, I want to welcome everyone. I'm going to just kind of go down the line and ask questions to these panelists, but I want them to jump in and be a part of the conversation as well. And it looks like we're just going to go right for it with the hard-hitting questions, but this is what this is about. And sometimes these conversations can be difficult, but I think they're always rewarding in the end. So Sierra, you're the lucky winner. Sierra and Seneca, either one of you. Why are Black women left unprotected when they are quick to show up for Black men so much? You know, we can even look at the Black Lives Matter movement, which is fantastic. And what's funny is, it's not funny, but ironic that it was created by Black women, Black queer women of color. But so many times we show up for Black men, but then we don't necessarily see the same response for women. In fact, Breonna Taylor is probably the only actually Black woman I've seen people really continuously protest and stand up for, which is great, but I want to see more. So Sierra, if you want to start, and then Seneca if you want, and anybody else can jump in.
Well, that's a really good question, and I thank you again for having me. My opinion on the way that women are not as protected is that I think that sometimes our personalities, or not even just our personalities, but our strength, it kind of intimidates people that don't maybe grow up with people that are strong like that. Or if they do, they don't tend to build upon understanding it. So I feel like sometimes it causes them to look at us like an enemy more so than a help, because they think that maybe we're coming on too strong. But it's not usually that case. I think that Black women show up for Black men because we understand the importance of how we raise Black men. We have sons all of the time. And I think that when you have a son, you grow up with an opinion that their thoughts matter and that they will need support as they grow. So that, if that answers.
Yeah, that was great, Seneca.
And just to bounce off of what Sierra's saying when she speaks of our strength as Black women, we're strong because we have to be strong. And if we want to talk about why don't we have the protection, it's because we have to talk about social conditioning. You know, we have to talk about, we've been conditioned to believe that Black women don't need protection. We've been conditioned to believe that Black women are superhuman, right? So, and that dates all the way back to slavery, if we want to be honest. We are, there was an article that came out actually, and it was talking about how little Black girls are over-sexualized, and they age little Black girls, you know? And little Black girls don't look older than their white peers. It's just the fact that they're Black. It's just the fact that we've been conditioned to believe that we are older, we can handle it, we can handle pain. We're disproportionately dying in childbirth because people think that we can handle more pain than we actually do. So I think the reason why we're not protected is because, again, we've been conditioned to believe that we don't need that protection when we do.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Yeah, that's deep. It was a few weeks ago, I saw people posting, mainly Black women posting, when was the first time a grown man hit on you when you were little? And I thought, how sad is that? But so many people could relate to it. So many people. Lawrence, I saw your face when I asked that question. So I would love for you to chime in.
I would definitely relate to a lot of what Seneca is saying. Social conditioning. And it's nothing that's big where you can just blatantly see it. It's a lot of little actions here and there throughout our childhood, to when we first go out on our own, to when we're now adults and we're trying to figure the world out for ourselves. We've been taken care of as men by Black women for so long that it's turned from something that we appreciated to something that's expected, right? And if you ever dare challenge the status quo because of our social hierarchy, we see that a lot of people are afraid to challenge it. For instance, in a sports group that I have, shout out to Three Man Weave, there was a post about a young lady from the NBA. And one of the NBA players said, yo, number 23 is balling. And she said, say my name or don't say it at all, or keep the comment, something of that nature, right? And so I seen it, and instead of commenting on it, I was like, let me see what my boys got to say about it. So I put it inside of the group chat, and I was like, reach or respect. And just to see the comments coming back in a space that's a safe zone for us as men, right? Where we're like, all right, yeah, I'm good. There's nobody around. I can say what I have to say. I'm like, all right, cool. Let me see your real character real quick. And you have half the dudes that are like, yo, it's a reach, but I understand. You have some dudes that are like, absolute reach. What is she talking about? This is sports. And then you got your dudes that are like, hey, yo, bro, that's like literally what the Black Lives Matter movement is about. Like when we say her name, she's literally saying, I'm blind. Like y'all don't see me. All I'm asking for you to do is recognize me and say my name. And as a Black man that's starting to fully understand what women are going through in this world, aside from just being Black, being a Black woman, it's like sometimes we got to take a step back and just simply listen without responding. Just listen and try to understand.
I thought I heard somebody else. Well, I mean, on the same topic, and my two couples can come in as we're talking about this. You know, most of us, I believe, saw the Red Table Talk with Will and Jada and the whole August Alsina situation. For those folks who don't know what I'm talking about, after this, I'm telling you that this would be a whole panel and discussion, so we don't have time to go through the whole thing. But go to Red Table Talk. Jada does it, is it weekly, monthly? And they basically discuss the relationship or the entanglement of her and August Alsina. But what the responses we got was a lot of, oh, we feel bad for August, we feel bad for Will. But it's always sometimes taking the side of the man, and maybe in this situation, you know, you do. But I'd love for maybe one of our couples to kind of comment on that, where, yeah, did you see some sort of difference with the way people reacted versus August and Jada, and why you think that is?
We'll go.
Okay.
I don't necessarily think that they're picking the men over the women in this case. Simply for the fact is that a lot of them were bringing up the predator thing. Now, if this was a man, you know, going after a young female, their community would be in an absolute uproar. Now, why wouldn't it be the same thing for a woman? And usually when we see women predators, it's swept under the rug most of the time. It's not as much attention to it as you would a man hitting on a young female. But that's my thought about it.
Yeah, and so you saw her as that's interesting. So you saw her as a predator basically in this situation.
Not in my case, but in looking at what people were saying about the whole predator thing is, yeah, if we don't look at it the same sense, a man hitting on a young female or a woman hitting on a young man, if we don't look at them at the same, then we can't really say that we want equality. You have to have equality all around. I don't necessarily see her as a predator just because they are grown adults. They have a choice to do that, but yeah, I just wanted to speak on that case in terms of the unprotected Black woman. I don't think it's necessarily unprotected.
In this situation, I got you. I know Sierra wants to say something, but I want to make sure Ryan and Amber chimes in, and I'll get to you, Whitley, as well.
I was going to chime in on what Kat said, and I love what she said about, you know, the predator aspect, what we see on social media, and equality. I think that if we really want to be equal across the board, then we have to also understand that the things that we've seen throughout social media and the time of social media, the age of social media, right? Things like, oh, he cheated on his wife while she was pregnant, and they're going through this, and they're supposed to be couple goals, and they're supposed to be this, and they're supposed to be that. But then at the same time, when you see the unconventional way of, oh, he gave me permission, or it was an open marriage, or it was this, or it was that. And I did not watch the full table talk, so I'm going to comment on what I know, or how I feel personally from a distance. But I think it was more so of a thing. I don't know if she's necessarily unprotected, because I agree with Kat in the sense of, y'all are grown, y'all made this decision, and this is their marriage. you know, being married, there's not everything doesn't go across the red table. Okay. Like everything doesn't go across, you know, there's things that my sisters don't know, or my closest friends, or even down to my parents. And my mom is like one of my best friends, you know what I'm saying? So there's things that are handled in the marriage, but I think that social pressure, the being famous or being the celebrity and something to talk about, I think it was addressed in the way that it could be addressed, and just moving forward on what to comment and what not to comment, and what to address and what not to address because of other people's expectations. And as a wife, maybe Jada feeling like this is my way of protecting my Black man. This is my way of protecting my marriage, or this is my way of, you know, bearing this weight of, you know what, I have to be some type of sun and shield for my husband, you know, even though I did this. It's interesting.
I just kind of wanted to piggyback on that a little bit too. Like, it's interesting that you bring up the point about her feeling like she has to protect her Black man when crying Will Smith face is what became the meme. And kind of talking about what Kat said about female predator, the way a female predator is viewed versus the way a male predator is viewed. When a female teacher gets caught having sex with a student, she gets fired, but the community doesn't look at that female like she's a predator. Actually, they look at that young boy, 13 years old, like, oh, he got game. How was he was able to pull a teacher? But if we flip that around and it's a male teacher, 40 years old with a 13-year-old girl, I need to know where he is if he's in my neighborhood. Like, it's a whole different scenario in that. And I'm not really gonna speak to the Will and Jada thing, just because I honestly I wasn't paying that no mind, to be frank. Like that got beat into the dirt for me a little bit, but kind of like speaking to what Kat said, like I just really identify with that.
Yeah, I think you guys are, and you all raise a good point here. In that situation, you know, you're right. I mean, we're right. Is there an unprotected Black woman? But yeah, in this situation, it just seems like it's different for you all. So this is interesting. So I want to get to Sierra and then Whitley.
So I think my opinion was actually said by both Kat and Ryan and Amber. So I actually don't really have much to say, but I agree with you both. Yeah, my opinion was said. I was going to say something, but Katie kind of said it. So.
Everybody's in alignment. I like it.
I'm with
Whitley?
Okay, so I feel like I have like a slightly different perspective a little bit, but I will say that at the beginning of everything that happened with the Jada and August thing, I had to check myself initially, because at first I watched the table talk and Jada said a whole bunch of nothing really, which again, she's allowed to do that. That's your marriage. Like, I mean, I really don't even think she needed to come to the table and explain, you know, nothing to nobody, because I mean, it's your marriage, okay? So initially I was like, girl, I just sat here for 8 minutes for you to talk in circles. And then it was just kind of like, it ain't none of your business, for real, for real. And so once they kind of like, that sat in with me, you know, I was upset at first because me being a really big on mental health and personal alignment and personal growth, I really like Jada. I like Jada as a person because she creates a platform for people to become to a safe space and really let go and really be honest. And I didn't feel like she did that. And I was kind of like, but as far as her being predatory, you know, I won't say anything about the age because August is pushing 30. You know, yes, there's a significant age gap, but I think the predatory behavior came more so from the fact that he was at a place where he was broken, and coming to you for help emotionally and then taking advantage of that. Like, that was really the part that really bothered me, because so many rare times I do think that people in brokenness do get taken advantage of. But I do think that they tried to crucify Jada. And like you guys did say, and I will agree with that point, that if it was anybody else, there would be like this type of, I mean, I'm on Twitter more so I'm not sure where everybody else is, but on Twitter, they were crucifying my girl for the predatory behavior. They were crucifying her for, you know, having Will with the sad face meme. It's like everything became Jada's fault. And I was like, what? it just baffled me that even in a situation where they've said on numerous occasions that Will Smith has done whatever he does or whatever the standard of their relationship is, even though how many times people have said that they do have an open relationship, which I don't think I've heard out of either of their mouths at all yet. So I don't really know. But the fact that everyone just so quickly was just like, Jada's the problem. I'm like, whoa. There's two other grown men in this situation. And I just find it very interesting that it is very easy to naturally blame the woman and naturally blame the Black woman. And I think that we've gotten into the habit of doing it so much that it happens innately. Like people don't even realize you do it unless you're being cognizant of the things that you're saying and you're perpetuating in regard to Black women.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I want to quickly read a comment, and then I know Mimi wants to chime in as well. One of our viewers, Tiffany, said, I'm assuming maybe August, his statement told me everything I needed to know about him and nothing at all about Jada. Dude is 28, he's young, but that's not predatory. People knew R. Kelly was full-on pedophile for years and said absolutely nothing. How is Jada a predator? And Lawrence, I want to say that you commented back to her and said celeb status, just like Epstein, money, power, and respect. That's very, very true. So I wanted to at least acknowledge the people that are engaging with us. Mimi.
I think it comes from an understanding that we have a lot of ageism when it comes to females, not with men. When it comes to men growing older, it's, oh, they're refined, they're silver foxes, they're this, and that. But if you take an older woman and put her on the cover of a magazine, they have an issue with what the sale is because they have to appeal to certain people. So when it comes to a Jada situation, I think that a lot of people have a problem with not her being just a woman, but her age. And that plays a big factor because she's a cougar, she's this, she's that. And, we actually do that when it comes to women and men all the time, especially older women. If there are 10 years of a difference and the man is younger, we're always like, oh, really? And we frown upon that. But if a man is like 40 and he's dating a woman who's 25 or married to her, then nobody blinks an eye. So I think that's a bigger issue besides her just being a Black woman, but I really just feel it's ageism that we have as a society we haven't broken yet.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up a really good point. There's a good amount of isms in this world that we have a lot of work to do, and that's unfortunately just one. I'd like to move on, if that's okay with all the panelists. Specifically, I want to talk a little bit about Black men. We're talking about Black women, but I want to make sure that our men chime in, that other people that want to chime in, please do. But within our Black community, I think this goes without saying to this panel, why do we ask Black men not to show their feelings? This is something I just actually, I have a younger brother. I just got finished talking to someone to kind of like, get him some therapy, things like that. And one of the things she asked me, I said, within the Black community, unfortunately, Black boys, and not all, we're not going to be general, we're not making a general statement here, are taught to hold in their feelings. Don't cry, it makes you look like a wimp. You got to, don't do this, it looks gay, it looks whatever. And I've seen that show up in him where he doesn't know what to do with it, and then it just bursts out. And a lot of times it becomes toxic and it shows up in not the best ways. I'm not saying all Black men clearly are like that, but why is that? Why is that still a thing? Where we're telling Black men, if you act this way, it's gay and fruity. But if you don't cry and do this, it means you're strong, you're a man. Who wants to chime in on that?
I'll chime in.
Yeah.
What I think that boils down to is kind of the patriarchal society that we live in. So if we live in a patriarchal society, then showing weakness or showing emotions might be attributed to showing weaknesses, which is going to affect your status as far as growth, societally, financially, and in all sorts of areas. I mean, the person with the big stick is the one who's standing at the head of the table. I know personally, I see it more with kids coming up than I do with adults. I know when I became an adult, I came up under that whole pretense of not really thinking about emotions like that. So I get married to my wife, who's a very emotional person, And I don't even know how to speak the language of emotions like that. So I had to learn that, like as an adult, kind of how to maneuver and how to explain, not even just have emotions, because obviously we all have emotions. It's crazy to think that people don't get sad and have all that stuff. But to be able to verbalize it, or to be able to explain, this is how I'm feeling, that was something that I had to learn how to do. And it doesn't, I think now, as a society, we're kind of moving in the direction that's more tolerant of men's emotions and of mental health and everything in general. I mean, it's a conversation we weren't having 10 years ago, but it's one that's being brought up more so today. And I think that's positive.
And do you mind if I
No, please jump in.
Okay. And I think that kind of ties into toxic masculinity. I know we're talking about that later, but I think that we need to redefine what it means to be masculine, right? Because it as obviously we are trying to survive in a patriarchal society, but what does it mean to be masculine? You know, can you not show emotions, and why can you not show emotions? And we have to kind of address the why. It's toxicity. That's exactly what it is. So we can move on.
I agree indefinitely with what Seneca is saying. I think the conversation needs to really be, you know, what is masculinity? But even just in showing emotions, quote unquote, I think if a lot more of our Black men were equipped with tools to just deal with them. You don't even necessarily have to show them. You just knew how to deal with them. You know, we have so many Black men who kill women for rejecting them, or because they just physically can't handle the emotions because they don't know what to do with them. And so even if they're not showing them, teaching them outlets to cope, ways to deal, how to feel, what it means to feel, then when they're, you know, 38, 29, they won't feel overwhelming amounts of like this pressure, like you shook up a can of soda and basically it's just like exploding everywhere at this point. But then when you look back at, you know, their upbringing and their view on emotions and their view on how to identify, there's too many grown men that I know that can't formulate a sentence about how they feel. When you ask a simple question and it shuts them down and makes them feel overwhelmed, and that's the beginning of it, you know, teaching them to acknowledge these feelings, even if you don't show them to nobody, acknowledge them with yourself.
That's a really good point. I've always said that they should teach this in sex ed. Remember, you know, when they like separate the girls and the boys, I'm like, they should teach no means no. You're not entitled to somebody. It's okay to express your feelings, you know, but we'll see if that gets on the curriculum. Lawrence.
Yes. So I love this question because it pops up literally every time we talk. Like, why don't Black men know how to express their feelings? Number one, we don't know how to express our feelings for the most part, right? It's a learning process for a lot of us. But before we start talking about why we don't know how, we have to go back to the root of the problem where it was like, what put you in this atmosphere to the point that you don't express your feelings, right? And I'm not coming here to point blame towards anybody, right? But again, society has done a lot of stuff to put us in the situation where our fathers are locked up or they're gone due to X, Y, and Z. So now we're being raised by mostly women in our society. And now we have to learn from the people around us because a big piece of what we need is taken away, right? And so those conversations that we hear inside of our households, right? Or the way that we see people interact, the adults above us, right? When a Black man decides that he wants to express his feelings to the woman that you're looking at, your aunt, and she turns around, she look at him, she's like, why you acting like a B word? Why you so emotional? Why you this? As a child, I'm looking at that and I'm like, don't do that, because then she's gonna respond to you and respect you in this manner, right? So you can't tell me I want you to act this way, but then when I do act this way, you berate me for it. How many times do we see online, my young boys that I teach in school, they all wanna be gangster. Why? Because every girl want a hood dude. Every girl want that dude who's just like, ooh, he got that thuggish feel to him, right? But what about the weird kid that like anime? You feel me? What about the weird kid that just wants to be himself? He doesn't want to fit in. Nobody's gonna be like, oh yeah, him over there. And so they have to conform so that they can get what they are attracted to. That Black woman, if she's like, that's what I want, well, that's what they're gonna act like because nobody's there to tell them better.
Wow, that's a whole different conversation. I feel like Lawrence, you and I are going to talk offline. That's such a, it's seriously, we're all perpetuating it for the most part. I didn't even think about it that way. So yeah, thank you for that. And Kat and Marcus, I know you guys wanted to jump in.
Yeah, we want to jump in.
Oh, it's cool. Can y'all hear me all right? All right, cool. I mean, I'm gonna touch on pretty much what everybody else is saying. I agree with it, but it's as far as like Lauren said, it's kind of like a duality thing. Because my mother, she was always teaching us, me and my sisters, but me just being a guy, she was teaching us how to be understanding of other people's emotions and understanding where people are coming from, everything like that. But I better not show no emotion because I gotta be tough. I can't be crying because, you know, that's gonna make me, as my man said, a B word. That's gonna make me an F word, if you will, and that ain't manly. You don't want to be getting looked down upon. So you gotta act like you the hardest dude. Think of how, you know, like he was talking about the gangsters. Every gangster trying to be the hardest gangster ever. Because if he the hardest gangster, I mean, ain't nobody gonna mess with him. Instead of understanding that part of that is rooted in them being broken and not being able to express themselves. So all they can do is resort to violence or resort to anger or resort to doing negative things that are destructive because we're not taught that, hey, it's cool. Every now and then something bad happen, you might need to cry. But if we looked at and we're crying, then it's like, man, look at this fool over here crying like a little girl. Where it's accepted for women to cry because we've all, you know, society has told us that it's okay for y'all to be emotional. And if you feel sad, you can cry. And if you need a hug, that's cool. But where guys, it's not like that unless you got like I would say a small circle of friends, because all of us got like that as men. We got a couple of friends that we can open up to, we can get a little emotional about with, and they won't look at us as being less than. And it's just crazy. Like I believe it was Ryan said that was it Ryan? It might have been Lawrence. One of them two said that you just gotta like conform to what society wants you to be, unfortunately. Because when you show emotion, now you're weak and you're not attractive no more. And that's all I got to say on that.
I mean, all of this makes sense. Did anybody else want to jump in before we kind of hop to some more toxicity and feeling questions?
I mean, I'm going to go just really quick, but that goes into a bit of toxic femininity of we have to hold other females accountable when we hear them say that they want a man to open up, but then they turn around and dismiss their feelings or call them names when they do. We got to start holding them accountable.
Yeah, you make a good point. I feel like, you know, after hearing what everyone's saying, especially also what Lawrence was saying, it's like it's a vicious cycle. You know, we say this, but then we all act a certain way. You know, and then with Lawrence saying, you know, of course the girls want the gangsters or whatever, but it's like, okay, then what are we teaching our girls then too? You know what I mean? It's a vicious cycle. So yeah, you bring up a really good point for sure. Let's define toxicity. Like we've brought it up, kind of touched on it because we were talking about feelings and everything, but how would you all define toxicity? Sierra, I'm just calling on anybody here. Did you want to jump in?
Yeah. I think toxicity, it stems mostly, or it begins with the neglect to realize your perspective of the negative views that you allow society to build for you. Instead of coming to your own conclusion, instead of looking at something maybe for face value when you see it and then understanding, you know, the different levels to it, you become toxic when you just go with what society tells you, or you just go with what you've heard, or you just go with what you're experiencing. Even with women that have broken hearts, you know, then all men aren't good. So you've built that toxic thought that all men aren't good when you didn't bother to think about maybe who you had been approaching or what you thought about when you were growing up, what a man should be, or anything of that sort. So I think it starts with your perspective and choosing not to see what other options of perspective are out there to grow. Toxicity is not growing.
Yeah, I never even thought about it that way. Like, I'm not even gonna lie. A lot of times when I think toxicity, I'm like, oh, when you hear about a man doing something, like, men are so toxic, but like anybody can be toxic, period. And you're right, having that mentality can be toxic as well, you know? So it's interesting that you said that. Lawrence, I'm with you. You said toxicity is lack of understanding and the actions that follow. Anybody else want to jump in?
I just wanted to elaborate on that real
Sure.
quick. Again, we especially as Americans, we are some of the most closed-minded people, point blank, period, right? And the only thing we know is what's presented right in front of us. Like, even when we talk about global stuff, we be like, what? Where's that country? I don't even know about it, right? So when we look at our society, we have this lack of understanding. If I see you as a Black woman and I come from middle America, I've never interacted with you, the only perception I have of you is what I've seen on TV, heard about online, or my closed-minded parents and their groups of friends, what they said about you. So when I first interact with you, I'm gonna act a certain type of way. Why? Because I have a lack of understanding. So we just have to understand when we talk about toxicity, it's that person not understanding. And I think if we address it in that manner, we can start making progress rather than just saying, you're toxic, you're toxic, you're toxic, and then just holding each other back.
Yes.
You nailed it. I feel like you're also like preaching to me too. So I'm like, yeah, I mean, you're right. Listen, you're right. I'm definitely one of those people that's like, oh, you're toxic. You know what I mean? But what is the end goal there? You know? But I like the way that you explain that. Whitley, toxicity to me is when we take something and push it to excess. You want to expand on that?
Sorry, I couldn't find the unmute button. I think what I'm trying to say is, like, I think there are levels, like when you think about like toxic masculinity or toxic femininity, I think, you know, the beginning idea of something sometimes a lot is genuine in nature. And I think it's like we just overflow it. We're just like, okay, well then if it's this and it's this, it's like it's this big, huge snowball effect to where something that is normally felt or normally encountered, we've made it worse. Like, for example, like if you have someone who feels, you know, insecure, that's a very natural feeling to feel insecure. Now, when you take the insecurity and then you gaslight other people with that insecurity, okay, now we're crossing into that threshold of being toxic. But I think, again, it goes way back to understanding the underlying feelings. And when you understand that some things that you're feeling are naturally felt amongst more than just you and other people, I think it's easier for people to be able to kind of control those things and kind of stop things from going into that toxic manner.
That's a good point. That's a really good point. And I want to make sure, like, we are definitely not bashing our community by any means. So I want to make sure that I ask this. I think that some toxicity is also learned from non-Black people. There is white toxicity, and I'd love to get your opinion on how you think that affects. I mean, I think there's a lot of things that it affects with the Black community, but how white toxicity can manifest into power and kind of where that leads us. And do we as a community kind of learn from that toxicity and then spread it amongst the Black community?
Yeah.
I heard someone say, yeah.
Oh, yeah, that was me. Yeah,
What you got?
Absolutely. What I get from toxicity, if I were to define it, I would say it's an addiction to chaos. It's an addiction to trauma. So when you ask your question, it's how does white toxicity manifest into our community? It's like a Stockholm syndrome thing, right? Because most of us are we define our success on how we integrate into white supremacy, how we integrate into white spaces, how we are perceived by the white community, right? And it's toxic. If we are continuously being traumatized, we are continuously trying to navigate this unnatural way of living, right? Because we can't even walk outside our houses without fear, really. We can't even feel protected by the entities that are designed to protect us. We are afraid of them. That's toxic. And we have this addiction to it. You know, the first thing we do is we're going to call the police if something goes wrong. Well, if they've continuously shown us that they're not protecting us, but we don't have any other direction, we haven't created within ourselves how to protect us. We haven't created community protection. We haven't, you know what I mean? And so now that manifests into our own relationships into our homes. And I keep hearing the word understanding, right? I think a lot of us understand our, our partners. I've been in relationships where I've understood my partner, and I've been in relationships where I've listened to understand, right? But I still, and it was toxic. I understood that it was toxic, right? But you're still addicted to that relationship. It's a toxic relationship. And so that's kind of how I view it.
That's a really good point. And I'm checking in on Ryan and Amber and your time, because I want to make sure y'all, get in if you need to before you leave.
She's not here yet, but I did want to
Perfect.
chime in on a point that Seneca had made, and just on the white toxicity point. I think toxicity is exacerbated by the fact that you're able by your social circle, and the fact that like the world is really big, right? So there's groups of people who are in the alt-right. There's groups of people who believe a certain thing, and they're emboldened by each other. And so white people are, I don't want to say just white people in general, but since they have the most people and they have the largest social circle, then their toxicity is what's actually set the system to begin with. So when Black people are seeing that, like, they're able to come to power based on their own toxicity. I mean, that's how they made all their money, was based on how toxic they were for the past 400 years, like, or actually for all of society to begin with, to be frank. So we see that, and then Black people look at it as, okay, well, this is the way that you get ahead. Mm-hmm. And then that's kind of how toxicity comes about within our own community as a way to get ahead. And it just kind of rolls all downhill from there.
Very good point. I see an explanations points, expectation, Caucasian expectations from Lawrence. What do you mean?
When I say Caucasian expectations, right? Just like the brother just stated, every power structure in America is majority ran by Caucasians, right? Therefore, the standard is going to be set to a Caucasian expectation. Therefore, us who grow up in a low income or impoverished area, for the most part, we're just trying to make it up. A few years ago, Ray Shrimmer made a song, Up Like Donald Trump. And we all were like, yeah, why didn't we question it? Because Donald Trump's at the top of the food chain and we're down here. We're all trying to get down there. Again, it's not just something big. It's these little things here and there. All of our music is all about what? Getting money, trying to be better than the next person. Like, I was thinking the other day, I was looking at people's Facebook posts, right? And people like stunting on you, yeah, doing it better than you, stunting on all of my haters, da 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 da. It's a mindset we all have, which is like, I gotta be better than the next person. It's not, we don't often see like, yeah, I'm out here leveled up, I'm doing it for my people, we all gonna win. Like, it's everybody's like, yeah, I'm the best, you can't be better. And so that mindset just, it's not African American. It's not African. We've all survived off of community. From the second we step foot on this continent to when you take it back before we even got here, it's always been community. But that sense of community, like Seneca and them said, has been broken, because now we're all trying to get up like Donald Trump.
Cool if I hop in there?
Yeah, please, Marcus.
I agree with you, Lawrence, man. I agree with you. I think part of that is because white people have created a society and then have made us splinter amongst ourselves. So then we keep having that mentality, kind of like that crab in a barrel mentality. I'm climbing out, I ain't helping, I'm getting mine, I hope you get yours. And then when I'm getting mine, I'm gonna show you what I'm doing. And when people get stunned on, what happens? Then you got other people that become jealous of you. And when you get people that come jealous of you, now you become a target. Now you got people want to come in there, and if they don't want to kill you, they want to rob you, or they want to take what you got, because now you're all in their face with it. And I think I was watching an interview, it was like Lil Boosie. He was talking about how rappers always get killed in their hometown, usually. And he was saying how it was the people there, it happens because the people are hypnotized by hatred, is what he was saying. He was like, damn, so if you listen to this dude and you don't like him, so you hearing him all day, you hearing somebody else talking about him, you come home, your kids is rapping, rapping his songs, your girl rapping his songs. Now you got this man in your face all day, hearing him all day, and you start getting mad about it. You're like, man, I'm gonna go do something about this man, because I'm tired of what he got. I'm gonna take what's his and make it mine. And that's the weird mentality that we have fallen into, because that's how Caucasians have done it throughout society. It's pretty much just take, get somebody else to do something for them, take, and then divide the people up and make them fight amongst themselves. I mean, shit, they do it themselves, but then they guys behind racism, because, well, I'll just say rednecks and slaves, they're essentially the same, but then society has made them seem like they're different when they're not. They were all treated the same back in the day. But that's for a different type of conversation. But anybody else want to hop in? I'm gonna let y'all go.
Thanks, Marcus. Sierra.
So just quickly, I wanted to jump in there. Just as another example of toxicity is the way we look at the hood, right? So you have some of the nicest houses you've ever seen in the hood sometimes. Big 4-story, houses, beautiful, right? And we talk about how our, government doesn't take care of them. But if we took care of them first, if we decided to become the people that take care of them and build the systems, build the plumbing companies that will come in and fix your plumbing, or come in and paint your house, or fix your shutters. I believe we've become toxic to ourselves because we've decided that it's somebody else's job to make us sometimes validated, by the society we live in. And that's also a toxic mental thing for Black people that we go through. We grow up and we call it the hood. Why don't we call it our neighborhood like it is? Don't call it the hood, because I feel like it's a toxic way of saying it's a bad place, or it's a place that no one else wants to be. You know what I mean? So I just wanted to throw that in there, chime in.
Well, I want to piggyback off of that real quick.
Please.
It's like, why are we always looking for someone to save us?
Yeah.
Or whether it's our hoods being, gentrified, or, building them back up and stuff like that. We always want to force the blame, but then we still want to look for help in the same sense, instead of helping ourselves. Like, we have to help ourselves first. We can't always rely on outside forces to start building this back up. We have to do it ourselves. Like, we've seen 400 years of little to no help. And so at what point are we going to move forward with trying to help ourselves, be proactive, help ourselves first before we start asking for other help?
Right. And validation on top of that. Why do we continue to look for validation from these folks, from our oppressors or whoever? Why? That's a good point. I heard somebody jump. I heard someone.
I was going to piggyback in reference to what Sierra said and Kat, just that, when we are formulating and understanding that we are helping our community, it's a shame when it doesn't work in our favor too, because the crab syndrome that Marcus was talking about leaving up and then looking down, on the people, I've always heard it as the people pulling the person down, so the crab never gets out of the basket. So there's an understanding where I've reached back many times to employ people to bring them up and to do things, and instead of looking at, I'll respect the company more, I'll do more in an understanding to know that we're running this race together, they've actually, turned it down to, well, you should understand, or I shouldn't have to do this, or you should do this for me just because. And I'm like, but if I'm here and I've done this, then where are we now equalizing that? And it's not fair, because what Kat said is, why are we looking for outside entities? Well, at that point, I don't feel like I'm an outside entity. I feel like I'm a part of that community. So why aren't we working harder together? So I think sometimes we have to look inside our choices. And when we are able to get a leg up, or whatever you want to call it, in your understanding or what you've gone through, then it's for you to take it, the bull by the horns, they would say, and ride it through. So I think sometimes we do ourselves a disservice by having a scapegoat, where some people don't have that.
That's a good point too. I know Seneca, I think you wanted to jump in.
You know, I love us. I love us. I just want us to be, I want us to be patient with each other, show empathy with each other. We have a lot of unpacking to do, 400 years, okay? And I know it's a lot of us feel the same way. We want to be able to build up our own communities and change our relationships with the hood and police ourselves and trust each other and so into these Black businesses, right? But then there's a lot of us who have, you know, we have to unpack these things. Like, why would we rather work for these white entities instead of ourselves? Well, because we've been conditioned that way for 400 years. So we can't really expect for our entire community to just jump on board and say, no, I'm going to work for this Black business. I don't know if I'm going to survive here. I don't know if it's going to pay my bills, but I'm taking a chance on us. You can't really, I don't fault a Black person for successfully integrating into this society, but I would love for us to be able to do it, but I don't fault us. It's not our fault. And we have to really just kind of show each other compassion and patience. I understand Mimi was saying, you know, it's hard because it's like, it doesn't work in our benefit. I'm trying to help you, but you don't want my help. You don't want my help. But at the same sense, it's not necessarily that. It's Stockholm syndrome. We are battling with a lot of mental illnesses. So we have to really have a honest conversation about that and call a spade a spade.
I like that. So what is I know all of us have heard it, maybe even said it, and Mimi and Seneca, this is kind of what you're talking about, the whole like, okay, I want to bring us up. And then when things fail and you're like, I love us, but here we go again, right? I'm never going to do business with them again. I'm sitting here trying to help our community out and they're not doing this. I'm going to go somewhere else. I feel like we've said it, we've thought it, we've seen people who said that. So what is the alternative to that?
I think there definitely needs to be a sense of more loyalty. I think people think that we're loyal, but in essence, we're really not. And it's like when you look at other communities, you know, you'll see Asians who will come together and work with each other every single day, despite what their family relationships are, what their relationships are, if they like each other. I would never know. And I feel like Black people have taken the forefront of having private conversations on public spectrums. And I think it's like, if you want to reprimand someone who did something wrong, a business owner, I argue with people on their post 24/7, like, delete this. Let's take it to the inbox. If somebody, you know, it drives me crazy, especially people, you know, because I'm Greek. A lot of the panelists are also Greek. And so, especially if you're Greek and I see you out here talking crazy, you know, I'm a slide in your inbox quick, because I think there needs to be an understanding that we have enough negative perspective around us. We have enough negative conversation that pertains to us. And if someone did you wrong, I think they do need to be held accountable, but not on a public spectrum. Nobody wants to be embarrassed, regardless if it's among our people or other people. But you definitely not gonna hold me accountable in a room full of white people. You're not finna do that. Because then I'm not gonna say nothing there, but I'm finna drag your spirit, sis. You're not gonna drag me in a room of people that don't look like me. It ain't gonna happen. We're not gonna let that shape.
I feel like there's a secret code behind that. Like people,
right.
we should all know that. It's like couples when you like, you know, you're fighting in public, but you're gonna wait till you get in the car type of situation. You know what I mean? Sierra, I know you wanted to jump in.
And I'm gonna be brief. I just wanted to piggyback off of Whitley. I was like clapping without clapping in my mind on everything she said. You know, it's hardcore to believe that people that look like us have to be our enemy all the time, or that we have to be afraid to trust each other or afraid to see ourselves in each other. That's one thing I feel like the past and, you know, our history has taken from us, because, you know, lately I've been a YouTuber doing my history on Black history in different tribes of Africa and parts of Africa, because I can't name you one tribe. I can't name you one language, you know, and that's an unfortunate thing. And it comes down to us learning how to trust again and realize that when we see a Black person, we should see our family. We should see the persons in which we've lost and not so much people that are here to take from us. That's what I wanted to add. Thank you.
Oh, okay. My computer all of a sudden just went a little bit haywire. I apologize. Does anybody else want to jump in on this? I want to make sure I hear everyone.
I do. I wanted to jump in real quick.
Okay.
One thing I wanted to say as far as like supporting Black businesses, because I've seen a lot of people like chime in like, I would support Black businesses, but their price is so high, or I'm gonna support Black businesses, but up until I see the managers got an attitude or whatever. And I think it's super unfair, and it's kind of ridiculous that we have as a community the expectation is like, if we're gonna support, we'll support Black business if it's perfect. We'll support Black business, but they have to meet my criteria. Like, how many times have you been in a store at a nail salon or something and you think they talking trash about you in Korean, but y'all still gonna get your freaking nails done? Like, it's unfair that we kind of have that expectation set for Black businesses when they're our own people. Like, if I got a homegirl who's making shirts, I'm gonna buy a shirt. Like, why not? I don't know anything about the manager at Walmart. He could be a daggone racist for all I know. But if I need to buy some deodorant, I'm probably still gonna stop at Walmart. But you know what I'm saying? I just think it's ridiculous that we have such like high standards, and that Black businesses have to reach our criteria. Otherwise, we're gonna drag them, which is ridiculous.
Can I say something? I swear I'll keep it short. I swear. I think a lot of, Ryan is absolutely right, and I did a whole rant on this a while ago, and I think a lot of it is because we assimilate things that are good and or of quality with whiteness. And so even if the quality is trash, it does not matter, because people still spending hundreds of dollars on Nikes that cost $2 to make. And there ain't nothing you can tell nobody about buying Nike.
Those
and it baffles me, because the argument really isn't that you don't think Black business, you want to support Black business or customer service, whatever the case may be. It's just that you don't see Black business as adequate. You don't see Blackness as adequate. That's why there's still the argument of HBCUs against PWIs. It's like Blackness in itself is not good enough. And that's what the argument is. And as soon as you dismantle that thought process, then Blackness automatically will have its, you'll just automatically feel like it's worth it to you.
Yo, I feel like we're all giving you a round of applause right now. You hit the nail on the head. You hit the nail on the head. Does anybody else I want to make sure everybody's heard here. I think everybody did say something, no? This is so good. Listen, secretly in my mind, like after this, I want all of us to like be friends and have this every month, these discussions.
Yeah.
We're already best friends. So I heard somebody say something, I'm sorry. No?
I don't think you heard from Mimi though.
Nope.
She's a Black business owner, I think.
No, she is. She made the comment about doing Black business. Mimi, did you want to say anything else?
Oh, no, I think that everybody handled it. I mean, Whitley said it the best way I understand, in that sense of like, value mine, the way that I'm presenting it to you. And, how, the couple was stating just about how we do perceive different things. I was having this conversation earlier with my boyfriend just about why we put so much into saying that we're going to support a Black business, but when it comes to the work, maybe we're not doing it diligently enough. Just because it's easier to go to something with access, in a sense, that we feel is easier because we put it into our mind. So, I mean, Whitley said it. I love it. I think that is so true. And that's what I definitely try and promote, is that I have quality over quantity. And so if you're coming into my business and doing things like that, like I feel like you're a part of what I've created, which you already have a level of respect automatically. So let's just keep it going. So yeah, that's it. Thanks, Dave.
And we as a community, sometimes I'm like, do we know how powerful we are? Like, if every single one of us said, we're not gonna buy Nike, or we're not gonna buy McDonald's, do you know that business will go under like that? We are so powerful. And if we just put that power into doing business with each other, to not doing businesses with people who give two craps about us, like, anyway, we just have so much power. And I just want everyone to see it. Oh, I thought I heard that. Am I hearing things?
No, it was me. We spend $2 trillion a year as Black people, as a collective. And if we systematically came together and was like, we're not shopping there, the whole economy would literally collapse. There would only be the Black economy.
Yep. I think if my stats are right, I think the Black community has the biggest, I think we're the biggest buying power, and the LGBTQ community is actually right up there as well. So yeah, we have so much power, and I feel like sometimes we forget that, you know? But I love everything that's being said. I think this is a conversation in itself. So Kat, hint, hint, we can talk about that later. But I know I want to make sure that I ask this before I forget. We talked about toxic masculinity. That came up a lot. And a couple of you talked about toxic femininity, which we actually don't really hear a lot about. Do you think that the term toxic masculinity is overused? And if so, why do we never speak of toxic femininity? Or maybe we do, and I've just been living under a rock. I'd love for Lawrence, please.
So being a Black man, 6'3", 240 pounds, I'm a target. I'm a simple target. I can say something, it may be taken out of context, and now, yo, you're toxic, you're toxic. No, it's not toxic. Again, I bring everything in life back to lack of understanding, right? If somebody's been brought up, and not saying that it's an excuse either, but if somebody's been brought up using a certain type of terminology and now it's offensive to this person, I want you to take that step first. If that person's not trying to use it in a like derogatory way towards you, to say, hey, yo, I actually take offense to that, bro. If you come to me, you tell me that, I'm like, oh, you know what, my fault, I apologize for that. But when you come at somebody like, hey, yo, I don't like that, you already know how we are. We react. We are built to react. We're not built to stop and say, let me understand first. Why? Because all our lives, we've been taught to survive. And it's a survival technique, right? And so when we talk about the toxic masculinity, it's not toxic, it's that lack of understanding. And because we're always targeted to just point out a problem and not provide a solution, it becomes more toxic because nobody's trying to help the situation, just hurt it.
Yeah, I definitely thought you were about to quote Color Purple when you said all my life. I was like, here it comes. Seneca.
Kodak, I love you, but I'm going to have to disagree respectfully. I don't think toxic masculinity, the phrase, is used enough, if I'm being honest, right? I think that toxic masculinity in itself, what it means is to define, what it means to be masculine and to unpack that first, because most of those characteristics are toxic. And I think that's really all it is. I think we have to kind of bring that to the forefront because it's violent. I don't think that toxic femininity is necessarily a thing. I just don't. I don't think it is a thing. And as far as Kodak is, the points that he was raising, like you said in the beginning, listen to Black women. Listen to Black women. Like, what I'm trying to say is that toxic masculinity exists, and the things that are being perpetuated towards us and that are being perpetuated towards this community and society is toxic. We have to address it. We have to bring it to the forefront so that we can heal and so that we can work together as a team and as a collective. You are a target, but you're not a target for us. You're not a target for Black women. We protect y'all. We're at the forefront. You know what I mean? We're at the forefront of every movement historically. So you can't say, oh, I can say one thing wrong and everybody takes it wrong. No, maybe the police, but not a Black woman. A Black woman has your back. But I need for Black men and for, I'm just going to say, I'm going to keep it an interracial conversation. I need for Black men to listen to us when we say that, when we use this term, and understand that it's not an attack. It's just, these are things that need to be unpacked.
Wow, yeah. I mean, you make a really good case. As I'm listening to you and you're saying, listen to Black women, that's kind of it. Like when Black people, a lot of times when we say this is racist, right? We know because we've lived it, right? So kind of to Seneca's point, it's the same thing. We're telling you guys that this is toxic. And I'm not saying I agree or disagree with either, but I get what you're saying. It's kind of like, hey, no, we're yelling this, we're screaming this from the top of our lungs. No, this is toxic, and we need to do something about it. So that's an interesting viewpoint. Sierra, I know you wanted to jump in.
Yeah, I will agree with some of what Seneca said. I don't necessarily agree with that what did you say? Male toxicity, or what is it? I just lost it. But to say that that's not said enough, I think that in a way, if you really look at both sides, you know, feminine toxicity isn't said enough, because you have to look at it from the perspective that I can understand that for a long time, men have been able to pretty much say what they want, get away with it, no kind of, you know, repercussions for it, right? But there are some things that, you know, and not to say that we have a place, but I'm saying that there are some perspectives that have to be respected, that if a man is saying this, we shouldn't always look at it as being toxic towards us. Maybe it's not directed just towards us. If you can give me an example of what you mean when you say male toxicity, you're like, just an example, maybe I would understand a little better.
Did you
I
ever
mean,
oh, go ahead, Seneca, I'm sorry.
yeah, I mean, we can just go back to the example we were talking about before about men not being able to show emotion. You know what I mean? Men not being able to communicate what they feel, not understand what they feel. That's a form of toxic masculinity. It's really just, what is masculine? What is the definition of masculinity? And can we address those things? It's toxic to not be able to communicate how you feel. That's toxic masculinity. So let's talk about that. Bring that to the forefront so we can move forward.
I mean, that's one.
I'm loving this conversation.
Right, I can understand that, but I don't think that it's enough to say that men being even just afraid to show their emotions, that's a direct toxic action towards us to hurt us, not to hurt us. It might be something they don't know how to do, something they haven't grown up doing, but it's not something that has been perpetuated to say we are going to purposely treat our Black women with disrespect and not understanding that they need to hear what we feel too. You know, I don't think that that's a purpose thing. Maybe that's
playing devil's advocate real quick. Are you, or to my understanding, so are you saying that toxic masculinity can only be a conscious thing? Like, you can't unconsciously be toxic. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I think that's what I mean when I say that it's not a purposeful action towards us.
Okay.
I think that when I say that, I just mean that, you know, you can grow up toxic, like even with, you know, white people growing up racist. It's a conscious thing. It's an unconscious thing because they're grown up perpetually to think of things the way that they do. It's not that they see Black people and instantly go into rage. It's that they've been taught or they've been conditioned to.
So you don't think that that's toxic thing? Is that what you're saying? And this is me really just trying to understand.
I think that it can be considered toxic when you say it out loud, but if you consciously think of it on an emotional level that you're asking Black men to have, then maybe you can understand that the perspective is not directed. So when you directly call someone toxic, directly center them for being toxic, then you kind of cut them off from ever wanting to get that understanding.
Okay, got it. No, thank you. Thank you. I wanted to have that clarification. That was a good clarification. Lawrence, and then I guess Seneca, and then Whitley. Does that work? And then Kat. Everybody.
Yes. So again, let's go back to the root of the problem. If majority of the men in our community are locked up, dead, or being trashed in the streets, who is reinforcing this toxicity that we continue to speak of, right? Because I, as a man, can go to another man and be like, yeah, her butt fat, da, 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 right? But if women are going around and saying like, oh yeah, girl, I love when he called my butt fat, like, we're going to continue to do that. We only do what is going to be allowed. So you, as a woman who is screaming, you're toxic, you're toxic, you're toxic, you also have to look at your actions and what they're welcoming. Not to say, now let me make this very clear, not to say if you're wearing a certain something, you're whatever you want to be called. That's not it. That's unacceptable, right? But what I'm saying is a man can't just be simply called toxic for his actions if they've never been addressed. right? If he's never been taught otherwise, because the women in his life, in his circle, are saying, this is what's okay out of a woman, and that's what's not okay. And then when I go out and I see that being reinforced by other women, I'm going to think my actions are okay.
So do we have like a Me Too moment where the movement wasn't as valid? Because if you're bringing it into the fact of like where we're having, and I'm not trying to just jump in, but it just sparks something here. And with Seneca's understanding, I'm actually kind of like more towards leaning with her, only because there is an understanding of where she said it's not said enough about male toxicity, right? And so it was said a few years ago, and we called it the Me Too movement. And then it became anytime a man did something, whether it be a side hug or whatever, now it's an adverse sense of it's a Me Too movement. I have been subjected to something, which is not what we were really talking about with the Me Too movement. We were talking about locked doors, you know, suppression of, you know, your voice as a woman because you're being touched or accosted or whatever. Everything that was actually taught was okay to do at a time in growing up in society. So to piggyback on what you're saying, if a man is not being, his hand isn't being slapped, okay, each time he says that butt is fat, or I'm gonna roll up on the woman, or I'm gonna call her a B because she doesn't respond to me. Are those examples of male toxicity that when somebody does correct you and it isn't changed, then whose fault is it? Is it the woman's fault because she did?
No, not at all. And I fully agree with what you said. If that hand is slapped that first time, or if we came into contact, right, I use a certain type of language that's offensive, I apologize. If I go on to do it again, that is a toxic behavior because you have already stopped. You have made this communication with me and say, hey, I want you to understand how I feel about it, right? Now it's up to me to listen, not to say, well, you feel that way, but I feel this way. No, I simply just need to listen. Hey, this is how I feel about it. Is it going to kill me? No. If it's not a threat to my life, my limb, or my eyesight, I can make that change. My life is going to go on. But if I continue to make that action over and over again, call it toxic, point it out, cancel them, do what's necessary.
Right, because there's a learning moment.
Yes.
Right, which we should all have.
Mm-hmm. And I'm going to shift the conversation away from toxic masculinity because I do agree with a lot of you. Toxic femininity does exist because when we look at domestic violence, we're only looking at it from the male hitting a woman. We don't look at it with women hitting men. And oftentimes when there are arguments, you sometimes see women following up behind the men. You see them hitting men. And sometimes these same men are taught not to hit a woman. So what are they doing? They're walking away from the conversation, not to be disrespectful, but to get away from the argument so it doesn't escalate. But if you keep hitting him and you keep yelling at him, is that not toxic? Is that not toxic femininity? If you are telling a man to express his emotions and then go around and say you are a B or you are weak or you're not a man, is that not toxic? Sorry, I got real passionate real quick.
No, I love it. I mean, that was part of the question, and I'm happy you hit the nail on the head that you mentioned it. Whitley wants to say something.
Mimi actually started to address this, and she made a very important point, which is that we all really exhibit toxic behavior because it's taught on a societal level. So if you just look at our upbringings, how many of us came from a very healthy environment that taught us how to engage in a conversation about emotions or a conversation about how you felt on any level in real life? And so we are very quick, I think, to call anything toxic because, again, it's a learning curve. A lot of us have not learned this. There has not been someone who's been able to sit down and say, hey, you probably don't want to call women bitches. You know what I'm saying? And so until you have someone who brings these realizations to the conversation, to call someone toxic really is insensitive, because to assume that everyone has had the same experiences that you have had to get these awakening moments is unfair. And so we need to be teaching this dialogue. That way, then like Kodak said, I've now been corrected and I continue to do it. Now we cancel you. Now you're toxic because we've been brought to the forefront. We've given you this education in a way that you can receive it. Let's be clear, because you yelling at people is not a way for anyone to receive it. You give it to them in a way that they can receive the information. They've now learned this information. Now what you choose to do with it, honey, that's your business. But if you do, once that plight has been made, then we can start dissecting whether you're toxic or not.
Right.
And that's
You know what? I think that, and just something to think about, that this conversation of toxic masculinity and toxic femininity also is genderless. Just so, I mean, maybe that's blowing you guys' mind, but in the LGBTQ community, there's toxic masculinity with women. There could be toxic femininity with women and men. And you know what I mean? So a lot of times that, I guess, heteronormative, or normativity, I guess I should say, also seeps into the LGBTQ community as well. So I think they exist, yes, but I also see the different points that you guys are making. And somebody was saying something, I'm sorry. Was that Seneca?
Yeah, that was me. Just wanted to comment, Whitley, that was powerful, what you said. And I think, you know, when you ask what does it mean to be toxic, we all had different definitions, right? So when you started talking about the learning curve and what does it mean to us to be toxic, and we're throwing around this word toxic, we don't even have a collective definition of what it means to be toxic. So that was really powerful. Thank you for that.
Y'all dropping knowledge bombs. I want to make sure I want to make sure that I maybe get a couple more questions in and respect your time and respect the time that we told participants and our viewers. I did bring up LGBTQ, obviously. I'm sure anyone who's watching this can probably tell that I'm part of that community. I want to talk about the when I see Mimi laughing, I want to talk about how LGBTQ people show up in the Black community. And you're right, we keep bringing up toxic. There could be some toxicity there. I don't know. But in your experience, how has the LGBTQ community showed up? Because I can tell you, like right now, we have, and I swear I just happen to have it here. We had to print this, right, recently because Black Lives Matter, but sometimes LGBTQ people are left out of the conversation, and we're Black too. We still see Black trans women being murdered, assaulted by our own Black men. So I would just like to know how it shows up for you. I mean, maybe you guys are also, and this is a real conversation, maybe, you know, you guys aren't accepting. I don't think that's the case, but you know, I just would like to know how it shows up for you. Mimi, obviously, definitely want to talk to you about this. But I guess there could be we should have called this the toxicity conversation. And every time as somebody says toxic drink, we should do that next time. Y'all we'd be messed up. We would be messed up. Anyway, that's part 2 for all the viewers that are watching. Come back next time. We'll make it a drinking game. But I think Sierra wanted to say something. Then Mimi, I'd love to jump at you and your experience.
Well, I'll say since I was younger, I've always watched people, you know, try to point people out in school and try to, you know, decipher who they might be. Not that it would ever matter to them, but they just had to know. And I was like a protector of that. I always used to tell people, mind their business, worry about you. And then if you decide to, you know, express yourself on who you are later, then that's your business, because I feel like, you know, a lot of people don't allow people to come into their own understanding, you know, and they force them into being, you know, afraid of who they are. And I think that, you know, for me, it showed up as, you know, kind friends that I grew up with that were just a little different from other people, but nonetheless, nothing different as in their character and their spirit, you know, and most of the time, just my best friends I could ever have. So, you know, that's how it showed up for me. I'm a protector. I can't watch anyone disrespect anyone of the community ever. I'll go to jail sometime behind that. I'll tell you that. That's all I got to say.
Well, we need more people like you in the community too. And I definitely want to bring up, before Mimi talks, I'd love to get everybody's opinion on if you think the Black church is detrimental to the Black LGBTQ community. So we'll talk about that shortly.
To
Mimi?
the whole community, we're going to ask.
What?
Is it detrimental to the whole community? It should be the question.
All right, and we'll get into that as well. Mimi.
Well, I think in reference to the experience, I can be pretty much a mystique, I guess, in reference to like how I live my life, versus, certain things that I can see, certain things I fight for, certain things that I've endured as a different person in the spectrum where you want to talk to me, right? But within the Black community, I would have to say that, within growing up, I have probably been more objectified or had a situation in a sense of not being accepted for being who I was at a time, things like that, scoffed at, whatever. But, I feel like we have an understanding where if you have a community that is marginalized already, and then you take another community that is marginalized too, and then you say that, well, I'm being told I'm not good enough as a person of color, and now this person is doing something that I don't know if it's a want to be gay, I don't know if it's natural to be gay, and it's different than me. So if they're a smaller marginalization, it's easier for me to pick on them because then it won't show onto me. That's what most bullies do. And I'm not going to say that in a community everybody's a bully, because that's not the truth. My best friends and everybody is every bit a different color, and my best friends are all of color. So it wouldn't make any sense for me to say that the community itself as a Black community is just prejudiced towards LGBTQ people. That's not true. But I think that growing up, when you see somebody in your class and you feel a certain way, you will maybe pinpoint what points that person out to be lesser than you. And it makes you feel a part of the collective now, and you are no longer an outsider. So I don't blame a lot of people for doing that. I don't think it's wise now because we have so much education behind it. We've grown, we have resources, but I think within the Black community, it has been very separated from the white gay community, from clubs, from the chamber. When I started started volunteering with the chamber, I didn't see people that looked like me. There was maybe one other trans woman. It didn't reflect anybody of color. And that was one of my main motivations to integrate people more so. Not that, you should be even talking about integration when you're like 2017, but we have racism in our own community, and we don't address that often. And I feel like we have to do that in order for, Black trans women to be accepted for, and even a sense of power. I'm the first woman and first Black trans woman to be on the board and then serve as the first female president of a chamber that's been around forever right now, okay? So that tells you what the demographic of mindset was. White money, white power, whatever it was. And now we've all shaken it up. So I think we have a lot to learn. I think we can grow from that. I think Sierra's right. When you see it, you call it out for what it is. I think when we talk about male toxicity in a community where we say Black trans women are killed by Black men, because there's a sense of that they are gay when they are with a trans woman, and they don't want to have that exposed. It's not for trans women to expose them for the sense of danger, because you shouldn't use something over somebody's head to hurt them either, because society hasn't caught up to what we're doing. So I think that that's very sad, but we also have to make sure that we're not putting ourselves in positions too, and then saying it's because of these things. So I haven't experienced a lot of what, Black trans women go through. I've been fortunate in certain ways, not to do certain things, I guess, but I don't look down. I don't question. I just say that maybe we need to get to an understanding that we are responsible for ourselves, and we have to pick and choose our partners more efficiently in a way that is better for us. We can't just go with who is hot at the time or DMing you late or doing whatever. You have to protect yourself. Kind of going all around the spectrum, but I just felt like I'd put all that out before we have this whole conversation. But that's pretty much it. The Black community should accept the Black LGBTQ community, because if you think about being of color and then you break it down to another marginalization, how did you feel when you can't change your skin, and then now you're a person that can't change how you feel? It's not for you to do the same to somebody else. It's for you to actually lift them into it and say, okay, well, you know, I know how you feel, let's work this out, or it just shouldn't even matter. Because what is it going to do to you? What is it going to do for you to act negative towards people that wouldn't do anything to you negatively? You know? And so that's why it comes into a weird situation with me sometimes where we talk about lifting up the Black community. We talk about doing all of these things as Black people, but where do I fit as a Black trans woman at the head, pulling people up that maybe not necessarily agree with my lifestyle or who I am if they knew?
Truth. And a whole nother great conversation I would love to have in the future is why men who date Black trans women or trans women of color or, you know, are intimate with them, why all of a sudden they just flip a switch and kill them and assault them when it's clearly their own, I can curse, right? Their own shit, you know what I mean? And that's a whole different conversation that definitely needs.
It's the fear of the perception that's associated.
It is.
What you say?
The fear of the perception.
Oh, and it goes back to the whole masculinity, and I don't want to look gay, and I don't want to do this. But Whitley, I mentioned, and please anybody chime in, I mentioned the Black church and the LGBTQ community. Is it doing damage? Is it not? Is there for us? I mean, I know the answer, but what do you think? And Lawrence, you're next.
Yeah, okay. Can I ask Mimi one question real quick in regards to the
please.
Mimi, if this is off base or if you feel like it's offensive, please let me know. But me being a queer woman, I guess we could say that. I don't really identify with anything other than Black, but I mean, for the sake of conversation, do you feel like you said that your experiences were not the same of a lot of your peers. Do you think that is because you are more what they would say is passing? Because I know for me, I'm more feminine. People don't look at me and see that I'm gay unless I give you that information. So do you feel like your experience has been different because you are more passing and you can come off more, you know, what people identify as a Black woman?
Yes, I think that there's a catch-22 in it too, because even though I am able to walk through certain doors, when I get onto the other side of that door, if a Black man's approaching me, then I have to have that fear of what happens after. Not because he's a Black man, that's any man, just in general, I just want to say, but when we're talking about the targeting of certain Black trans women. But the thing is, I think that it's, you know, it is a catch-22 because you are, yes, walking amongst people. I always equate it to the X-Men. You have the ones that can walk amongst people and you have the ones that are big, blue and furry and still fight for the good of everybody and it doesn't really matter, you know, we're all still doing the same thing. But when it comes down to it, you sit with that inside yourself and you go, okay, well, no matter if I go to a bar or I go to a restaurant, if somebody's talking to me or whatever, at one point in that conversation, the right thing to do is to say this if it's going somewhere else. So you have to be very conscious of that. I do think my experience is different because I actually made an understanding before, you know, bippity boppity booing all of this into what you now know and see. Sorry, I'm a big Disney fanatic, but the thing is, I think that I was able to obtain a business mindset and take my time and be patient to become who I am. I think that the world has sped up in a certain way. I didn't know what a trans woman was. I didn't know there was a lane for me. I always thought I was something on the spectrum of not knowing and, you know, whatever, but people always treated me the same way because I've always been the same way. But I think that when I learned what it was, then I was like, oh, wow, I can actually get a lane that I can drive in and I can actually do something with because the gay community was not doing that for me. And they don't have to, but I didn't have a lane, you know? So yeah, I think that my experience is different. It's just because I grew into it later after achieving a business mindset and then growing versus some people when they're 16 and they are wanting to do this and not accepted. They maybe feel like they have to do what they have to do. So that's
the feelings are and definitely relatable in that essence, because that's what I, you know, with my also being a business owner, you know, I always feel the need to disclose that I'm, you know, gay, because we've had instances where people have withdrew partnerships and investing when they found out later on. And so I was kind of wondering how, you know, you went about it, because again, if you look at me, I mean, granted, right now I look really regular, but a bitch gets dolled up, honey. Okay.
Right.
And when I'm turned up, like, no one's going to look at me and think, oh, she's a lesbian. Like, no one's going to think that. And I think a lot of that is the assumption that everyone is straight, but another conversation for another day. But, you know, they look at me and they see someone who is straight passing. And I think sometimes it's more hurtful with the assumption, because they jump all in. Then you let me know that this one thing about me was what was a deal breaker for you. When
it's more hurtful. And it's also
right.
kind of weird, that people don't realize that when you're standing behind enemy lines and you get to hear all the gossip and all the kikiing and whatever, and you can't really say anything because you're like, oh, that's me. You know, it's hard on you. You know, it makes you scared to make a move. So no, I don't disclose that in my insurance business and things like that. But, you know, I feel like there's people that do know and they have a respect for me. But that's because my quality, you know, so yes, okay, so being Black, your quality has to be very high. Being Black, gay, or whatever, you're super high. You know, you just keep it's not enough. It's not enough. You know, so you have to be just so on point. You know, and that's a lot of stress. So yeah, but lovely.
Thank you for all that. And Whitley, that was a great question. Thank you for asking that. Lawrence, you wanted to say something, right?
Yeah, I'll start out with Whit. I don't think you should ever have to disclose to anybody your sexuality in order to provide a service. Like, in a sense, I feel as though if somebody decides they want to pull something from you or something of that nature because of it, that's our opportunity to educate and then further cancel afterwards, because now you're showing who you are, your lack of character and your lack of understanding. Secondly, we all have this sense of wanting to belong, right? We all want to belong, whether it's a man to his family, a person to their group, their college, whatever it is. And so as a Black community, right, church teaches us to think as a mass, as a whole, right? I grew up in the Christian church, and everything that I was taught was, we all do this because of this. Therefore, if somebody thinks outside of that box, we're now going to, you're a weirdo, you're everything outside of this, and you don't fit in. So you either have to A, change what you're doing to fit back in, or B, you're no longer a part of this community, right? And we learned that from such an early age. So when we start to talk about the LGBTQ community, and you have these little boys growing up, when they see somebody such as Mimi, or they see somebody like Whit who's gonna be like, oh yeah, I'm queer or I'm gay, they're gonna be like, that's bad, right? And why am I saying that's bad? Because of my lack of understanding, everything I was brought up to believe, and now you're asking me to question my beliefs. Cognitive dissonance, I'm gonna hit that wall, and now we're not having this conversation. I only have to react. But even to put all of that on top of it, I have to ask, and this is to mainly not only Mimi, but all of my Black women, what does it look like for me as a Black male, right? I'm very comfortable in my skin. I don't give a damn. I will have a conversation with Mimi, and somebody look and be like, oh, that nigga having a conversation with Mimi. Like, nah, I don't give a fuck. She's a whole ass human being, very intelligent, got a bomb ass business. We gonna talk, right? But for me as a Black male, how do we protect Black women, or how can you expect for Black men to step up for a Black trans woman when the reaction that's going to come back is going to be 10 times harder on him than he's ever had to hold, right? Because now he's like, well, I got to protect my sexuality, right? Because if I stand up and I post Black trans lives matter, everybody's going to think I'm some type of way. Black women won't talk to me anymore. And well, at the end of the day, I got to get mine. So damn, it's kind of hard for me to protect you if I got to look out for myself. Like, what's the expectation? How do we move from that? How do we maneuver in that area?
Oh, you know what? That's so deep, right? Because that's actually like, oh wow. Actually, you know, yes, thank you. Because that is an understanding that I have for the community, right? I don't blame a lot of people for their reactions of self-preservation. And that's what we have, okay? As a community, as people, as whatever. It's just like the men who I have a relationship with, right? I can be who I want to be all day long, okay? But some things I'm going to keep, because should I be like, oh, hey, mom and dad, like, by the way, I'm the Little Mermaid, you know, like, no, like that has nothing to do with what his whole thing is by what I identify as. And that's where it's hard, right? Because you're in the gray. So I feel like what you're talking about is like in the gray situation of it's not black and it's not white. You having a conversation with me, maybe optically people would not think anything of it, right? But say we take a gathering of like even this conversation, right? We put it together, it's you and me, people know the stats of the panel and what's going on. Where do you protect yourself? That's when we were bringing back to the feminine toxicity, okay? That's where it comes up. Because when you start to say a man is not a man because he, one, is attracted to a woman who identifies as a woman, looks like a woman, is a woman, okay, then you're wrong for that. Because see, what we don't understand is that in the trans women and trans men are what they are, okay? We can get into the neutral, the gender fluid, the whatever, but if a heterosexual cisgender man, which cisgender means you identify the birth, the sex you were given at birth, we're really taking a class here, but the thing is, then you're not wrong for being attracted to a trans woman. And it's not for other women to down those men for being attracted to a trans woman, which causes violence, which causes whatever, right? Insecurities. It's for you to be who you are. You should never feel fear that somebody who is not paying your bills, and this is the thing, people do pay people's bills. There are parents, there are companies, there are whatever, so you can't really say that anymore, but you should feel what's right for you. If somebody is going to, and this is another thing, I hate this, right? Because it's like, I can say, oh, well, if somebody's not gonna accept you, then you shouldn't deal with them. That's not life. You have to always deal with people that sometimes don't always accept you. And so I'm just gonna say that I think the biggest thing Black men can do is stop being so scared about the result, do what you want. If people start to see that there are more people in a collective understanding, then it's gonna push this further to where it doesn't matter. It shouldn't matter who you're defending if that's what you're standing up for. Just like if I'm supposed to stand up for Black men, is it not the same for me? You know, I mean, and that's the point. And that's where when Whitley says, well, because I'm passive or I'm this or that, depending on people's opinions, that's where it's a catch-22. Because see, if I'm saying, oh, I'm defending these Black men, I'm defending these Black women, I'm a part of these women group, and then a woman says, well, no, you're not, then where am I? Am I fighting for Black Lives Matter now? Am I a part of this? So I think that you have the right understanding that it is about women saying, if you are friends with a gay man or you're doing things that have something to do with the gay community, I don't want to be with you. I don't want to sleep with you. I don't want to play with you. That's not okay. Because again, it goes back into the emotion where you're breaking down in empathy for a community. And that's more masculine to me. That's more wonderful to me than some guy who's going to create slurs in separation because he feels like a big shot. I think you're more wonderful of a person. I think my partner is more wonderful of a person for accepting who they are and wondering who they want to have in their lives and respecting people's status of what they've achieved, not what they are. That makes you weak. And that is a thing.
I'm going to chime in real quick, but I feel like we've assimilated just on a survival mode, we've assimilated into white supremacist culture that anything that makes us look different, we bash. So basically, it doesn't matter if you are trans, if you are gay, if you are like myself in a transracial family, you are invalidated as a Black person. It's like you no longer exist in that realm. It's like you're basically an outlaw from the Black community. And I feel like, yeah, we way too much. Go ahead, Seneca.
Yeah, I mean, I think it speaks to intraracial privileges, right? And I appreciate this conversation because there's a lot that we need to be educated on within our own race, right? How can we use our privileges within our race to ensure we all get free? You know, we all need to get free because it's kind of funny. I was watching Pose. I had never watched that show before. I binge watched it. And when I went to sleep at 3:00 in the morning, y'all, I woke up I had a nightmare. Because I never realized that, you know, there's a community within my community, you know, Black LGBTQ people who are literally just trying to survive. They're literally just trying to live. You know what I mean? And I think it's in there. Oftentimes you all are invalidated because we're not open enough to speak on our privileges. When Lawrence talks about, well, how am I supposed to respond when I'm getting this backlash because I'm talking to a trans woman? Okay, well, the way you will respond is the way that we expect for white people to respond to their family members at Thanksgiving. You tell them that that's not okay. You know what I mean? We have to really be intentional about getting free. And really just appreciate you all. Really just appreciate you all. Continue to speak to us and educate us and let us know how we can be better allies.
I want to say, for one, I want to say thank you to Seneca real quick, because I'm not going to go into all the logistics, but some years ago, what was it, Seneca, 4 years ago, we had our little run-in, because I would like to acknowledge, this might be an unpopular opinion, but I'm going to say it anyways because your girl don't care. Black women lead the forefront of the homophobia movement. And it is Black women, and we were talking, Kodak said something about, you know, Black men are pretty much just doing what Black women want them to do. And really, in essence, I see what he was talking about, and that's why I'm agreeing with him, because men are robotic, to say for a lack of better words. You know, they are easily conditioned. And so they're going to do things that make them feel good. Women make them feel good. And so what a woman wants them to do, you know, they're going to inadvertently be that thing. And so when a couple years ago, Seneca had made a post on Facebook that was not too LGBTQ friendly. And I had said something to her because, you know, for those who don't know, she's my sorority sister. We crossed the same school, same chapter. So like, this is my sister. So like, now I got to check, sister, because what we not going to do. And so it got a little messy, but, you know, the end result was that, you know, she was genuinely able to take understanding, and she was able to apologize. And then she was also able to reposition her leg in the community with the way she engaged in that conversation. And that's what's important. Because I think, again, when we talk about people who are toxic, right? We could have canceled Seneca, right? Been like, ugh, canceled, she's done, she's finished. But again, we have to understand that a lot of these conversations are coming from a place of ignorance. We don't know. You don't know unless you've been there, until someone has been able to sit you down and say, hey, that ain't it. That ain't the move. And so, you know, you have to be in a place, and I think someone just said it, yeah, she was willing to grow. And, you know, she was in a place where she wanted to educate. She wanted to further, you know, the agenda of the Black movement. And so that's what's required. And so, you know, I know he was asking Agent Kodak, I'm sorry, I call you Kodak all the time, and everyone else can call him Lawrence. But I know he was asking, you know, what we needed from Black men, but the real question is, you know, what we need from Black women. And we need for them to stand up for us, you know, and especially because even if someone assumes that a Black woman is gay, it's still 10 times better than them assuming a Black man is gay. And I had to accept that I'm privileged in the gay community. I'm privileged because I'm straight passing. I'm privileged because I'm feminine. I'm privileged because I'm cute. So I'm privileged because, you know, I have all of these privileges within the community, and I know that. And I know that because me kissing on my woman don't discuss most people. Why? Because they have a whole sex genre on porn just for it. And so identifying those privileges, like Seneca said, and being able to use your privilege to speak to more people and to let people, you know, use your platform to elevate the narrative of that. So,
Consistency.
Oh, thank you. And I'm happy you guys were able to have that discussion. I want to make sure we get Sierra before we wrap up.
Just a brief comment about how women are the forefront people to perpetuate. I would say that that's also dealing with the way that society has made our community hide who they are, you know, and not just our community, but, you know, there's even in the white community, they've had to hide who they are. So when you have to hide and you have to play hide and seek with people, and you might run into a woman that has been married to a man for umpteen years and then finds out something, you know, is different about him that she never knew his perspective on it, that changes her. And that changes her perspective of that community towards her. And that's a reason I believe, you know, Black women, women in general, have been the forefront, because they're not they're victims in the sense of not being told the truth, but they're also, you know, perpetuating it, because that kind of pain, if not dealt with, if not if not, you know, raised to understand that people can change their mind, people can change who they are at any given moment, and it's not your choice. You know, with not having that understanding, it keeps you perpetuating the fact that that community is negative, and that's not fair, you know.
I think it stems from a history of like the Christianity and like marginalization. I think that that experience, CC, is one that's validated in certain people's understandings, but I don't think that it's so big of an influx that like it's created a whole genre of mindset. I think that that's a situation that is horrible for anybody to go through. You know, I mean, it is. But I think that it comes from the act of sin, the act of what we have to follow in Christianity, of what we're supposed to do. So when you jump outside of that, like somebody else on the panel stated, then you're straying away. Okay, you're no longer in a collective mindset. I believe it was Kodak that said that. So, you know, when you do that, then there's a fear base around that. And I think that when you have Black women that are protecting their Black men, or, you know, whatever they feel they're doing, then all of a sudden they're wanting to alienate something different, because, you know, how many times have we heard, oh, if the Black man dates outside his race, oh, they're taking all the good Black men. But like, you're talking about like one person you saw, like you're not talking about like anybody else. Like I'm sorry, who on the panel, one of the gentlemen said it about the man who has to be the rapper versus the man who likes the anime, right? So that's is the same kind of thing. Like, we're not looking at a perspective of this one person in their situations. I think that it really does stem from Christianity, just like everybody, white, Black, anybody. LGBTQ community has gotten further because of certain movements and things that we've done. Again, started the Stonewall movement, Black trans women, let's just say that. But the thing is, so women nonetheless, but the thing is, it's just, I don't think it's necessarily because of marriage and finding out. I just think that it just does stem from Christianity, and we've all been that, even people, myself included. You know, I struggled with an understanding because I went to Catholic school, you know, so I understood exactly how to target somebody, how to be mean, how to be vicious, and then to change that and to do better with myself.
But I struggle with it, with feeling like it really truly comes from Christianity. I know we say that, but the reality is the double standard of what we read in the Bible. Because now, again, I can stand beside people who are consistent, right? I am against homosexuality. I'm against premarital sex. I am against, you know, alcoholism. I'm against all of these things. Like, if you are consistently against those things, okay, cool. Then it's probably about the Lord and your relationship with that religion. But when that's the only thing that people stick to, that's when it's like, is it really about God though? Because it's inconsistent. Like, you'll have older Black women who will be like, ain't nobody gonna be gay in my house, while your grandkids all came from non-married relationships. They stayed in your house on the weekends, and that don't make any sense to me. And so, you know, Black people love to say that we are perpetuating an agenda. Before we go, make sure we say there ain't no gay agenda. It's about, you know, representation, because you have this society that teaches kids that it's better to kill themselves than to be themselves. And so, yes, there is going to be a level of representation that, again, probably wouldn't be needed if you stop telling your kids that being gay is a sin. I mean, I'm just saying. And so when you look at the bigger picture, I think the real question is, what is Black people's real issue with homosexuality? Because I really don't think it's the Bible.
Yo, I really want to chime in real quick, because like I find myself explaining this to a lot of my boys when like the conversation of like LGBTQ comes up, or if we're in a space like I live in Los Angeles, California, right? Literally, I am in the middle of the happiest place ever. West Hollywood is rainbow written. Right? So you're gonna deal with somebody who is gay at some point in time, right? And when they're like, yo, there's an agenda out here, bro, like they got something going on. I'm like, nah, bro, just look at it like this. For centuries, for years, they've been operating, they've been here, but they've been in what they call the closet, right? You have all these people who are like, I'm not gonna express myself because it's a danger to my life. Like literally Mimi was like, it's a danger to my life. You feel me? And when you understand that, you're like, oh, okay. But all of a sudden when they're like, it's okay for everybody to be themselves, and you got a wave of people like, I'm finally free to be who I am. You got everybody like, yo, what the fuck is going on? Like, excuse my language. You're like, yo, where did all these people come from? I see it in TV now. They writing it in books. They on TV. They up there in places in the government. Like, there's a conspiracy. No, it's not a conspiracy, bro. People are just finally able to be themselves. And it's crazy when you finally understand, because again, even myself, I'm not a guy. I have done wrong. I've been homophobic in my life, but again, it came with a sense of understanding, bro. Like when you go from seeing yourself calling somebody like the F word all the time, and then you see how that hurts that person, and they sit you down and be like, hey, bro, you my mans, and I respect you enough to let you know, like, I'm gay. And I was like, I'm looking at one of my boys like, for one, you feel comfortable enough to tell me because you feel like I'm going to understand you, right? And when you start to hear these stories about how people are shunned away from their family and this, that, and the other, and now they find a sense of welcomeness or belongingness with their friends simply because we're millennials. We grew up with a different mindset. It makes you see the world different. So for a lot of us, we need to start unlearning and relearning, right? That all of these people are part of our community. If it was not for the LGBTQ community, there would be no civil rights, point blank, period. But that comes along with understanding history. And if you don't understand history, well, you're bound to repeat it.
Boom. I like it. Kat, I have to be super transparent with you. And then I want everybody to say something before we leave. I want to leave on a positive note. I love this conversation. So you had asked me to moderate this, and you had told me what it was about. Mimi told me a little bit too. And, you know, you were talking about Black men and women and relationships. And I immediately was like, why is she asking me to do this? But I think as I'm like hearing and, you know, and you all are talking about it, and Seneca, you had mentioned like, you know, there's a whole different community out there, and sometimes we don't feel like we fit in. I realized that's where that was coming from. It's like, wait a minute, I'm Black. You know what I mean? But I'm just sometimes so used to being left out of these conversations that I was like, why is she asking me to do this? This doesn't make any sense. You know what I mean? So I get that. And it's nice to hear what everybody has to say. And it's nice to be included in this conversation.
You know what? It's funny because Whitley took me back a second. And Whitley, I'm sorry, I have to call you out. Because she was like, we're often not involved in these conversations. And I am so grateful that you invited me to this conversation. And that honestly broke my heart, because I'm all about inclusivity. Like, if we can't all be different and come together, then what's the point? Like, there's no progress without difference. Like, you have to have difference. You have to learn other people's perspectives. Otherwise, we're going to stay in the same shape, the same form, and there's going to be no growth. So I really appreciate all the different perspectives, all the different lifestyles, and I really appreciate everybody being on this panel.
Yeah, I feel like but you can chime in. I was going to ask everybody to just keep it short. If we can leave with just something positive that you got from this, or something positive you want to leave for people watching, as far as everything we talked about. I know that's pretty general, but just something, I mean, Kat, what you said was absolutely perfect, but something you want to leave the audience with. Should I just go down the names?
I'll start.
Okay.
Honestly, I'll just say what I said before. There's no progress without growth. There's no progress without different perspectives. So just keep learning, keep growing, and keep learning from other people. That's the only way we're going to grow. What about you, Marcus?
I enjoyed the conversation. I think that these are the type of talks everybody needs to have, and that in order in us for to improve as people, as a community, that we just need to put in the hard work, because a lot of people don't even want to put in the work. We want to do all the talking, but we don't want to work. So if we keep working at it, keep having these conversations, then there's some improvement that should happen, but we got to keep that mindset going forward. So that's all I'll say on that.
I like that. I'm just going to go in order of how I see you guys. Lawrence or Kodak, which I totally didn't pick up on until halfway through.
Either one is totally fine. The thing I would like to leave everybody with, would be when we interact with each other, always remember that you're seeing a reflection of yourself in that person that you're interacting with. I got that from Deepak Chopra book, The 7 Spiritual Laws of Success, #1 book in the entire world. I encourage everybody to read it. But when I started to look at the world through that lens, understanding became a lifestyle, right? If I see you and you're acting out towards me, it's not because of me. It's something that you're having a challenge with, right? And when we go around the world trying to find that understanding or seeing ourselves in other people or what we lack that somebody else has, we tend to learn more from one another rather than seeing that and then because we don't understand it, starting to hate you because of it, our differences. And so let's embrace our differences, see a reflection of each other in ourselves, and love is free.
Thank you. Thank you. Seneca.
Okay, sorry about that. This conversation was transformative. I loved it. These are the conversations that lead to action. All of us are just trying to be free. Kind of like Kodak was saying, if we can just embrace our differences, because we're not a monolith, but we are a community. And to just continue to love on each other, continue to have these conversations. I don't care how difficult it is, just create safe spaces for each other. And that's how we're going to grow. That's how we're going to get free. That's how we're going to, build, develop better relationships with our neighborhoods and our, it's how we're going to evolve. So I really appreciate it. Thank you, Katie.
And Ryan and Amber, and I'm so happy you guys are still here.
Okay, and I wanted to comment on that. Like, she's been here, and I was just like, this is a really good conversation. Just piggybacking off of what everybody was saying, having open conversations, understanding the language that people are talking, understanding where they're coming from, understanding their perspective and their experiences. This helped me, even especially when Mimi was talking and throughout this whole conversation. I think that I have these questions, but not having this community outside of just my family or the people that know me. It's hard to get another perspective from someone else that doesn't live your experience. And I think that that's why it's so powerful. That's why this is so good. Outside of just having the conversations, it's good for mental health, mental wealth. You know what I'm saying? So I just appreciate you guys and just thank you for having us. And I'm like, of course, my mom is downstairs like, what are you at? It doesn't matter. No, I'm just kidding. no, but yeah. So thank you. I just appreciate it.
And all I wanted to say was thank you, Kat, for organizing this and
yes, Kat,
inviting me into it and my wife into it. I've been preaching for the past couple of weeks and months and everything, saying there's two types of people. There's talkers and there's doers.
Yes.
And I appreciate being in a panel full of people who are doers. Appreciate Kat, because you know how many times people talk about, oh, we should do X, Y, and Z. We should have a conversation. We should do. I'm a guitarist. You know how many people hit me up about guitar lessons that never come through? Like, so I saw the conversation, but then a couple of days later, I was seeing organization, and I just wanted to give you a shout out for that, because that's not how everybody is, and I appreciate you.
Thank you, guys. And Whitley.
Sorry. I was typing something in the chat. But I just want to say, first of all, Eboné, you did fantastic. You were a great moderator. You kept us on track because, we could easily be way deep in conversation somewhere. And Kat, what I was putting in the group was that, she was saying that her follow-up game was strong, because I smooth forgot all about it. And I was like, oh, snap, yeah, today, because I be, you got to have those people that reinforce. But, today's topic or conversation was much needed. We talk a lot about Black women and Black people being multifaceted. And I think we just want to remember that the community is also multifaceted, and that there's going to be different depths of people. And as long as we're leading with love in our education, make sure that we're giving people, pertinent knowledge that they can take with them, that they can actually receive. Because one of my psychology teachers, shout out to Dr. Carson, she used to always say, if someone doesn't understand what you're saying and you keep saying it the same way, it's not going to make them understand it anymore. So if you're saying something to someone in a way they're not receiving it, then you need to change the dialogue and bring it down to an area where they can receive, because the conversation is important and no one is exempt from the conversation. So I hope we continue talking about it, y'all.
Awesome. Thank you. Mimi.
Real quick, can I just say I couldn't have done it without Ebony, Mimi, and Raya. Y'all three helped me make this vision. Help me bring this vision to life. So y'all are amazing.
Thanks. And two more. Mimi.
Well, as the president of the ECCDC, I thank everybody for being on the panel. I thank you, Ebony, for being a dear friend and a wonderful person in my life. And Kat, you're awesome. I think that when you brought up this vision during a Kiki with you, me, and Cece, as we always do, that it was something that I couldn't stand by and just kind of not see come to fruition, and I think that you're just a smart, brilliant woman, and you've always been kind-hearted, and you can see from the panel of people that you have such an understanding of what we've communicated to each other here. You are the 60 degrees for everybody here right now. And it's a beautiful thing, and it's how the world should be. I think that having understanding and growth in a conversation that hopefully people from the chamber, from the Facebooks, from whatever, that aren't just in our demographic, sexual orientations or whatever, can actually gain perspective and understand. That's my main role as the leader of this organization, to provide. And when I felt that this was something that was amazing, something that was going to be moving, and then to have just educated, wonderful people present this to the world of the chamber and businesses and everybody else. I feel so humbled that everybody just had this wonderful conversation. All I say is that for people watching and things like that, that everybody here on this panel has never given up. They've always endured something, but they've also had to understand the strength within themselves. And I think that starts first is understanding yourself, and the rest is uncertainty, but we just have to go through it and just create a lane for some people, but definitely for yourselves. And I'm just very proud to be a part of this panel.
Well said. And Sierra.
Yes. My best friend, Katie. Thank you so much for having me. I think this was really wonderful. It's powerful to hear everybody speak, powerful to hear everybody's perspective. This is not a Beyonce plug, but Black is king and love is power. So I just want to say that, I'm proud to be friends and to be acquaintances with all of you. And to everybody listening, keep the conversation going, because as we talk about it, you should be talking about it so that we can become a bigger collective on this conversation. And let's just see how many of our opinions actually match up and, can grow together. And this was really beautiful. And I can't wait to do it again. Can't wait till we talk about some real spicy stuff that we don't agree on, you know what I mean? But, this was powerful, and I'm glad to be a part of it. Glad to know you. And Mimi, thank you for helping. You've always been that person. And Ebony, I never met you in person, but I've heard about you and how wonderful you are. And you did a wonderful job today.
You all are really, really sweet. And I appreciate all of you. I want to just thank you all. There's different forms of activism. And one of the ones that I say is Black joy. And that's what you guys gave me today. So thank you for being a part of this very important conversation. Again, everybody who's watching, thank you for joining us. And I'm sure we can figure out a way, if you want to reach out to any of these people, to get you their contact information. I'm sure I can say Mimi and the ECCDC team can get you everybody's contact if you want to reach out to somebody in particular. But Kat, again, thank you for this great conversation. Thank you to ECCDC, the Equality Chamber of Commerce, for partnering up with this. And yeah, everybody homework assignment out there is to keep these discussions going. So we hope you join us next time. My panelists, stay behind the scenes, please, before you log out. But everybody else, we'll just say bye and thank you so much for joining us.